Hey guys, and welcome back into our weekly prep football report. We are down to the nitty-gritty now. We are really close. Division II AAA and Division II AA. So the private schools are in their semifinal round this Friday. We have 3 teams left there: Baylor and McCallie in D2 AAA and Boyd Buchanan in D2 AA. So a win there by any of those teams, and they are in the Blue Cross Bowl, right across the street here almost at Finley Stadium, just down the road actually. So they are a round ahead of the public schools. Public schools are in the third round. They're in the quarterfinals. And we've got a total of Tennessee and Georgia schools. We've got a total of 13 teams left. That's private and public schools. So lots of teams still going. In Class 1A, South Pitt had a big second half performance last week from their junior running back, Jamichael Buckner. So they beat Chat Prep to advance there.
I'm glad we had a game like this, because if we would have blew them out, we would have went into third round cocky, and I'm glad we had a close game like that.
In AA, we've got 2 teams left. We could have a semifinal next week if Marion County, which is hosting Westmoreland this week, if they win, and Bledsoe County, which is on the road against York Institute. They lost a really close game to York earlier this year. So if they can avenge that and they win, we could have a Bledsoe at Marion semifinal next week, which would be just huge in the Sequatchie Valley. I think everybody would be there for that one. Then in 3A, this week we've already got 2 area teams. Meigs County will be at Sequatchie County, so that's a big one there. The winner there will host, most likely, Alcoa. Normally you don't like to go out on a ledge and say who's going to win, but Alcoa has won the last 9 state championships in 3A, so it's a pretty safe bet that Alcoa is going to be there visiting one of those 2 teams, whoever wins there. In 5A, East Hamilton, hats off to East Hamilton. Coach Nance and those guys just continue to find ways in the second half to beat teams into submission in the 5A bracket. And this week, East Hamilton will host Oak Ridge. If they win that one, they would host again next week in the 5A semifinals. So those teams, all those public schools, really have done an outstanding job of getting to this third round, looking to get to the semifinals next week, which is where Boyd Buchanan and Baylor McCallie are this week in the private schools. So Boyd Buchanan, which most of the year has kind of gone back and forth with Christ Presbyterian Academy, those teams have been ranked number 1, each of them at one time. Right now, the last statewide polls that came out, they were actually tied for number 1 in the state. So that's a huge matchup. Both teams 12-0. CPA has won last year's state championship over Boyd Buchanan, so no surprises there. These 2 teams probably expected to meet at some point, and now it's going to be the semifinals rather than the championship game. Also, Boyd Buchanan coach Gary Rankin, he's sitting on 499 wins. If he wins this one, that's 500 wins for Coach Rankin, that's a state record for the number of wins he already has, as well as his 17 state championships that he's won. So he's done just about everything you can possibly do. Now he's looking to get to that milestone of 500 wins there when they travel to CPA. And then Baylor in D2 AAA, Baylor will host Brentwood Academy, a game that a few weeks ago when we had the Hurricane Helene that moved through the southeast, Baylor was at Brentwood Academy that night, and the weather really played havoc for both teams. Brentwood Academy obviously has Tennessee commitment. George McIntyre is their quarterback. He was kind of grounded. Baylor's offense, which has been just magnificent all season, it was kind of grounded because of the weather. That game ended up 7-6 with Baylor winning. This time, the weather should be clear. It's going to be a lot cooler, but it should be clear, so both offenses clicking right now. Look for a lot more points to be scored there. And then McCallie travels to Innsworth, where we don't expect a lot of points to be scored. Innsworth right now, defensively this year, NBA in the regular season scored 14 points on them, and that's the most they've given up. Nobody else has scored more than 7 points on Innsworth all season. They've got some guys that can match McCallie athletically as far as, these future college players, SEC. They've got, guys going to Tennessee, TCU, down to Vandy in Tennessee for some of their commitments. So Innsworth really is stacked on the defensive side. McCallie will have their work cut out for them because they'll be on the road for that one. But you get a McCallie win and a Baylor win, and we have part 2 of what we had last year, where those 2 teams will face off in the state championship game in a few weeks. So that's kind of where we are in Tennessee. In Georgia, Tryon and Ringgold both won. They will be on the road. Christian Heritage and Calhoun advance as well, so they will be at home. So we're down to just 4 teams in the North Georgia area, and a couple of those teams really have their work cut out for them going on the road. So we'll see what happens there. But we're going to have some teams we know for sure, a handful of them at least playing next week. Possibility, as I mentioned before, we could have a huge Bledsoe Marion game in the semifinals. So stay tuned here. We'll talk about whatever happens this week. We'll talk about that and look ahead to next week's games next week on this show. Looking forward to seeing you guys.